Today, I'd like to talk about this topic. Is Buddhism selfish? I think it's always good to ask ourselves these questions. Even some of you might identify as a Buddhist. Still, it's good to ask ourselves questions about whether Buddhism is this or that, and this will help us to reflect. And the Buddha himself said that if there is criticism on his teaching, then we shouldn't refute that without investigating. And if there is praise of his teaching, then we shouldn't just agree with that without investigating. This he said in one of the first of his in the first of his teachings in the largest book of the Buddhist text. So let's go into this topic of today. So is Buddhism selfish? I would like to answer this question using several stories, and also by talking about a little short text that the Buddha talks about, a little short teaching that the Buddha gave, in which he talks about 4 kinds of people. He said there are 4 kinds of people in this world: those who neither provide benefit to themselves nor to others, those who provide benefit to themselves, but those who do not provide any benefit to themselves, but do take care of others, and those who provide benefit to themselves, but do not take care of others at all. So these would normally be considered selfish in the general understanding of that word. And then there are those that can take both care of others and themselves. So what does Buddhism have to say about this? Well, to first start with, there is, of course, when we normally think of people who are doing harm to others and to themselves, then that is usually something we consider a low kind of life. That is not something to want to aim for. And this is what the Buddha called this is the first kind of people, who neither provide any benefit to themselves nor to others. And in other words, they don't do anything good for themselves or for other people. And in that way, in a certain sense, in that way, they are destroying themselves. Because if you never do anything good for yourself or others that is really spiritually useful, then it's like you are one of those trees that the Buddha talks about in one of the Buddhist texts. He says there are certain bamboo trees that when they have grown to a certain length, there are fruits coming from that tree. But if those fruits are not picked up by birds or something, then the tree will just die because of that fruits. Those fruits will destroy the tree. In the same way, some people destroy themselves by harming other people. And in that way, they are actually harming themselves as well. This is a picture of King Pasenadi. King Pasenadi, he was a famous king in the time of the Buddha. And this is a picture of an Indian television series in which he also, in which an actor also played him. So King Pasenadi asked the Buddha about this once. He said, is it true that if a person is hurting other people, like when you engage in a war, that you're actually hurting yourself? And the Buddha fully agreed with him on that. And when you are actually abstaining from hurting other people, you take good care of other people. In that way, you also take good care of yourself. But I'll get back to that in a moment. So this is kind of like common sense, right? We all know this. But it's important to notice that according to Buddhism, when we harm other people, we also harm ourselves. And this is something that can really change our perspective if you think about it. There was a moment, there was an anecdote that was talked about by an American Buddhist teacher, and this was a Tibetan monk who was invited to come and see an exhibition, and I think this was in Europe, about Jews in the Second World War. And this was very terrible because these Jews were very poorly treated during the Second World War, and they were put into concentration camps, and they were starved, and then many of them were killed in the process. And then the man who brought this Tibetan monk to this exhibition, he knew that this Tibetan monk, he was a person who valued compassion very highly. So he said to the monk, "You must feel a lot of compassion for these people that were so much hurt by the Nazis." And then the man, the Tibetan monk, he responded by saying that, yes, I feel a lot of compassion for them. They must have suffered a lot. But I even feel more compassion for the Nazi guards who took care of these people in such a poor way, who treated them so poorly, and who hurt them and killed them. And this was a bit of surprising to the person who was taking the Tibetan monk to the exhibition, because he thought, well, there's nothing to be sorry for. These Nazis were all put into prison after the war, or they were executed, and that's the end of the story. But the Tibetan monk said this was very harmful for them, because in his perspective, the Jewish people, they were hurt a lot, but in that process they grew stronger, whereas the German Nazi guards, they hurt these people so much, but in the process they only became worse and worse and worse, and created a worse and worse future for themselves. So in Buddhism, this is a bit of an extreme example, very pretty dark, and I'm sorry for that, but I'm just trying to tell you this in order to show you that it's very important that you realize that in Buddhism, the way we treat other people, we always see this as something that we treat other people through ourselves. So whenever we treat other people poorly, we also treat ourselves poorly in the process. So this is why this is the first point I'd like to make about this. So you can see that the way we look at ourselves and others in Buddhism may be a little bit different from the way we normally look at the world. Then there are people who do provide benefit to others. They take good care of others. They might have a duty to others and take good care of them, like a mother to her children. But they don't take good care of themselves. This in Buddhism is also considered not perfect, not quite well. Even though in the world, in generally speaking, these people are usually praised. The example is the mother who takes care of her children and does not pursue her own interest or pursue her own spiritual fulfillment, but only takes care of others. Now, it's important to notice that in many cases, people do fulfill themselves, do grow in the process of helping others. But that's not what the Buddha means here. He's talking about people who take very good care of other people, but in the process, they forget themselves. They don't connect it with themselves. A while back, there was a Buddhist monk that I know very well, and we used to work together for many activities in the temple. He was also in the international team in the temple in Thailand, and we used to work together for many things. And then one day I heard the news that he was going to go to another country, and that he was going to uh, to let somebody else become the head of his team, and he was taking care of international guests and so on. And this was very surprising to me because he was doing a very good job. So I asked him about it, and then he told me that he went very strongly out of his way to take good care of other people in the temple. But in the process, he lost himself, and he didn't really think about how to grow in the process, how to connect it to his own spiritual growth. And then he consulted the deputy abbot. Our deputy abbot in Thailand, he's called Lompadata Chivo. He consulted Lompadata about that, and then Lompadata said, every time we do something in the temple, we work for others, we take care of others, we also have to connect it to our own growth, to our own learning, to our own practice, and to our own attainment. So I remember these words. They have lingered with me ever since. From this is about 15 years ago, but it's still very important for me to think about that. He did manage to change his life afterwards, and now he's a very happy and successful abbot in one of the East Asian countries. But the story shows that sometimes when we take care of other people without connecting it to our own spiritual growth, we can make mistakes. The Buddha compared this with a blind person holding a lamp for other people. And this picture shows that metaphor, but I don't think it's very clear that it's a blind person. Maybe the person who drew the picture never saw a blind person. But anyway, it's a good metaphor. You're holding a lamp for others to walk, but you cannot see the road yourself. So this is an important thing. Even that mother that I just mentioned that wants to take care of her children and maybe doesn't want to pursue a career or pursue her spiritual development, she might even find happiness in that. She might even find some fulfillment in that. But she has to connect it with her own growth. She has to find her own growth in that process. If she forgets about herself, then eventually she will be disenchanted, and she might become disappointed in her life. So we may know a few of these people, right? That's why it's important that when we are spiritually developing ourselves, and that we look at ourselves and ask ourselves the question, how was I doing last year? How was I doing last month? And how am I doing now? And am I finding some inner fulfillment? Am I finding some growth that I can be happy when I look in the mirror? There was a man in Thailand. He was quite famous. I can't remember his name. He taught politics. He taught about politics, and he was actually the teacher of Thaksin, the who was the prime minister in Thailand for many years, and still has a lot of influence in Thailand up till today. And he was also the teacher of some American presidents. This was a very influential man. He was a Thai teacher of politics, and he was able to teach a guy like Thaksin, right? And he became the prime minister. He was able to teach some of people who became American presidents, but he didn't achieve anything noteworthy himself except for being a teacher to others. And then he asked the question, he wrote a letter to our abbot and he asked him a question asking him, how come my life is like this? And the abbot said, well, you've always been like this. You like to teach other people but you forget to teach the only person in the world that really can help you grow, and that is the person in the mirror. Then there are some people who provide benefit to themselves, but not to others. This can work for a while if it's like a step in the right direction. Now, normally when we think of people who take good care of themselves, but not for others, we think of these people as selfish. But it doesn't have to be like that. Because really what we refer to as selfishness is often a state of mind when people are no longer interested in other people. They are no longer taking care of other people. They are no longer kind to other people. And that is not necessarily true if somebody has just wants to take care of themselves first and doesn't have a lot of space in his life or her life for other people, then that may be a choice, a temporary choice for a while. Doesn't make that person angry or doesn't make that person greedy. That's a different thing. So when we think about being selfish, we often actually use this as a sort of we always put this label on many kinds of people, but if you look closely, these people that are called selfish, usually these people are greedy. They want something too much, or they are very hateful. They just hate everybody. And that may not be the case with everybody who's taking care of themselves for a while. So some people just want to take some time for themselves. They want to make sure that they are taken care of. They want to, maybe they want to have a break, or they may just want to feel that they have to need some time to really uh, get their lives settled, or they might need some time to spiritually develop themselves, become more self-reliant, or become find more wisdom in their lives. Now that's a very wise choice, and that's okay. It's like a step towards something greater, then that's okay. But we shouldn't get stuck there too long. There's a story about that, about choosing that step. Mhm. This monk, his name was Attadatta. I don't have a picture of him. And Attadatta, he heard the news that the Buddha was about to pass away. So this is like the end of the life of the Buddha, right? So this is like a long time ago, over 2000 years ago. And then Attadatta heard that news, and Attadatta, they immediately made plans to travel to see the place where the Buddha was going to pass away, which is in Kushinagar, in current day Kushinagar in India. And they all went there. They all traveled there, and they all prepared themselves. And one of them, Attadatta, he just stayed. He just stayed, and he said, I'm not ready yet to go. And everybody said, why don't you just hurry? You may not be in time. And then he said, no, I want to take care of myself, want to practice. Because, he said, if I now practice myself in meditation and attain a deeper experience, I can still ask the Buddha about that experience. I can still consult him. I can still consult him about the obstacles that I'm facing. But if I just go now and I just go to that busy place where he's passing away, then I might not be able to take care of myself first. And I have to take care of myself if I really want to do that. So then he made the choice, and a lot of people were angry about that. They thought he was not devoted to the Buddha. He was not loyal to him. But when the news reached the Buddha actually praised him. He said, Attadatta made the right choice. And when he comes with any obstacles, when he has something uh, that he has attained, he can still tell me, and he will still have attained something before I pass away from this world. And then this will be a great joy for him and for me. So this was a very important moment in the life of this monk. So it's important that we start in the spiritual life with taking care of ourselves. And this is a question that is a problem which sometimes is faced by people. This is a mistake that some people make when they come to the temple. Sometimes they immediately think about how they're going to teach other people, and that can be a mistake. Lompi Nicolassi, he said once that he was struggling that when he became a teacher and started to teach other people more as a Buddhist monk, he realized that when he was learning new teachings from his teachers, that sometimes he wouldn't, instead of thinking how he would apply them to himself, he would be thinking how he would apply them to others. So this is a mistake because we always have to make sure that we take good care of ourselves as well. Sometimes I see advertisements of priests, churches or congregations looking for new priests. And they advertise it as you should become a priest because then you will really be able to teach other people and share God's word with other people. And I think, well, that's good. They are looking for a pastor, they're looking for a priest. But then I wonder, why do they advertise it in that way? Like it's like only about teaching others. Doesn't a priest or a pastor first and foremost have to take care of themselves? And just a question that came to mind when I saw this advertisement. So this is something that sometimes Buddhists also make this mistake, that they take care of other people very well, but they forget themselves. And the Buddha said, you can only train yourself by yourself. Nobody else can train you as well as you can yourself. The Buddha, he also said that he showed the way. He was, all the Buddhas, he said, they show the way, but you must walk by yourself. You have to put in the effort yourself. And that's he expanded on that metaphor once when there was somebody who consulted who consulted the Buddha, who were maybe not consulted, maybe kind of critical to the Buddha. He said, this person said to the Buddha, well, there are all these monks walking around, and some of them are actually not that good monks, and they are your students, Venerable. He said, they are your students, Mr. Venerable Gautama. He said, they are your disciples. He said that to the Buddha. So what do you have to say about that? And the Buddha said, I only point the way. And when I show these people the directions and I tell them all the directions correctly, and I guide them through the process, and they do not walk the right way, they just go in a different direction. It's not my fault. They have to try and find their path, and then eventually they will learn. So in this sense, it's very important to realize this, that in the spiritual life, we always have to reflect on ourselves. And sometimes we may choose for a while to take care of ourselves and to wait with taking care of other people. But we shouldn't wait too long, because the fourth and most important, oh, yes, I'll get to that in a moment. Yeah. So, because it's very important to realize that when we are taking care of ourselves, we are taking care of the person who is most dear, right? So we shouldn't get too stuck too long taking only care of ourselves, but it's a good way to start. There is this woman called Queen Malika. She was a queen, and she was actually just a simple flower girl who sold flowers on the street. But she had this wonderful appearance and aura, and one king, he fell in love with her, and this was the same king that I mentioned before, King Pasenadi. And because of that, he made her his consort, his queen. But because she started out as a simple flower sales flower girl. She was actually, yeah, she was always kind of direct and to the point, and she never really lost that trait. So one day the king invited her to for a romantic moment. I mean, he took a special romantic moment with her, and then he asked her, "Who do you love the most?" You know, he might have aimed for a sort of Disney moment, you know, wanting to have this kind of special romantic moment, and she would have said you, and he would have said, and for me it's you, and then they will be happy, they would have happily ever after, right? But this is not a Disney movie. This is a Buddhist text. So it didn't end that way. Malika was very direct. So she simply said, to be honest, I think I love myself the most, sire. And then he said, well, maybe you're right. To be honest, I think I love myself the most as well. But that doesn't sound very romantic. So they went to consult the Buddha. Uh, King Pasenadi went to consult the Buddha about every little thing. So you get the trend. So King Pasenadi consulted the Buddha about this, and the Buddha, he said, uh, no one dearer than yourself can be found in this world. Well, he didn't literally say that everybody loves themselves the most, but he did say that there is nobody dearer than yourself that can be found in the world. We all would like to take care of ourselves. We all find that we all want to be happy. We don't want to suffer. We all want to live, but most of us do, and we don't want to die. And because of that, this is like this sort of self-knowledge that arises in the mind, right? We want to be happy. We don't want to suffer. Other people are also like that. Other people are also like that. This is the fundamental truth. The Buddha also said that the ultimate wish of every living being is happiness. And that's a kind of a hard truth to digest, you know. I often get the question from my Dutch students who are kind of afraid of the Russian invasion these days, that they are, what is my opinion about Putin or something like that. And the thing is that even a person whom we very much dislike or very much afraid of, they still want to be happy, but they might not have a wise way to try to reach that happiness. And that's really the problem. It's not that people who do wrong, that they don't want to be happy. It's more like they have a very twisted way of trying to be happy. Even people who are kill or people who kill or plunder, they still think this is a sort of way to be happy, but they are twisted in their thinking. So eventually we are all the same, that we want to be happy, we don't want to suffer. Because of that, the Buddha continues talking to King Pasenadi, and he says to him, when you know that you are most dear to yourself, you don't want to die, you want to live, you want to be happy, you don't want to suffer, then you also don't hurt another. The self-knowledge of this is the basis for trying to develop empathy for others. This is the Buddhist ethics. So when we understand that we are really, we want to be happy, but we suffer because we sometimes are greedy. We suffer because we sometimes are hateful. We suffer because sometimes we have distorted perceptions of reality, which in Buddhism we call delusion. Then we open our eyes and we look at all the people around us and we think it's the same thing with them. It's the same. And because of that similar thing, same thing, we then develop empathy. Empathy can only arise if we look at ourselves first. You can't have any real empathy with others, real compassion with others, if you don't look at your own self first. So this is very important, and that's why in Buddhism we say that you have to start with yourself on the spiritual path, and then you can be there for others more in a more profound way. Sometimes this process is also formulated in a negative way, but not negative in a wrong way, but like in negative terms. In Christianity, this is the famous saying, do to others as you would have them do to you. Or do not, if you would, whatever thing you do not want to be hurt at, I don't know the exact quote in English, but anything that you don't want to be hurt at, you should also not hurt others. This is from the Gospels in Christianity. And it also exists in Buddhism. This is the quote, treat not others in ways that you yourself would find hurtful. This is from the Udana Vaka. But in fact, this is the Pali equivalent, all tremble at violence, all fear death. Comparing others with yourself, you should not kill or cause to kill. So this is like a basic ethics of Buddhism. We look at ourselves, we look at others, we know that there's a lot that we have in common. In Thai language, we use this term in loving kindness meditation, which is a kind of meditation. We use this term that we are all friends. We are all friends, or we are all fellows on the in the journey of old age, sickness, and death. We all have to experience this suffering, and in that we are completely the same. You know, some people might have a dark skin, some people might have a light skin, some people might have gray hair, some people might have red hair, some people might have black hair, some people might have blonde hair, but we all end up with gray hair at the end, right? When we all end up with an old wrinkled skin. So there's a lot that we have in common, much more than we sometimes think. And when we sometimes see other people suffer, then we also realize, okay, they can also be mortal. And sometimes in that way, we feel our jealousy or our problems that we have with others, we feel those problems decrease. So the golden rule is a very good rule as well, and that very much connects with this idea. If you know yourself, you can also understand other people better. Now, this is not always very easily understood, not that self-evident maybe. There was one man who actually challenged me on this. He said, it's not true. Many people, they know themselves only and they don't know others. But this is actually just a superficial knowledge. If you really want to understand other people, you really have to get to know yourself also. Otherwise, it'd just be a sort of intellectual knowledge, a knowledge which you develop to understand other people, but you only develop it to flee from yourself. So this is this is like the basic foundation of Buddhism. Like we start with ourselves, take good care of ourselves. We look at ourselves, what do we need? Other people also have greed, hatred, delusion. They also suffer. They also want to be happy. And they can develop the opposites of greed, hatred, and delusion, to develop generosity, to develop loving kindness, to develop wisdom. Then we come to the final and ultimate goal of Buddhism, that is to take both care of yourself and others. And this is the highest goal. Not everybody is up for this, but it's the best if we can make it to this stage, can make it to this process. And there's a beautiful metaphor that the Buddha taught about this. It's the metaphor of the two acrobats. And you may have heard of it before. It's quite famous in Western Buddhism. Here's a historical picture that you might not come across often. If you look carefully, it's kind of weird. There's two Indian people standing here. It may look like a color picture, but it's not. It's actually a black and white picture that was colored in a little bit. So there's two acrobats standing here. This is the traditional street acrobats from India back in the old days. And this guy just below, yes, you have guessed it right. He's actually holding up this entire bamboo pole using his own chin. How about that? Now that's something you can make quite a lot of money with if you do that in New York, right? Or if you do that in Atlanta, maybe as well. I don't know if that's allowed in Atlanta. So why did the Buddha talk about traditional street acrobats? Well, the Buddha, so this kind of acrobats already existed in the time of the Buddha. They have been existing until modern times. So the Buddha said, suppose there is a guy, there's a little girl, she's standing here. She's one of those acrobats. And then there is a man who's holding her up. He's holding her up. He's holding the bamboo pole. Can you see it, the picture? Yeah. It doesn't matter. It's just a metaphor. So the man is holding up the bamboo, right? I don't know. The story doesn't tell whether he's holding it up on his chin or on his head or whatever. That doesn't matter. It's just a story. So he's holding up this bamboo pole, and there's the little girl that's standing up on top of it. And then the man, he says,
You can
and
hear
then the
us.
man, he then says to the girl, which is probably to test her. He then says to the girl, he then shouts to her, "You make sure you take care of of me, that you take care of me, okay? You watch me, and I watch you." What do you think will happen? Well, you switched on the microphone. You have to respond now.
Just now.
Sorry?
What's the question? I went to get Nang Yan to move your face, so I didn't even hear it.
What?
What is the question that you're asking?
Oh, yeah, I was just saying that the guy who was holding the pole, he was saying to the girl who was standing on the pole, "Will you take care of me? Will you watch me? And I will watch you." So that's not gonna work, right? So the girl was saying to the man, she was saying, "No, master," because he was her master. "No, master, no, teacher, no, master, that's not gonna work. I have to take care of myself. I have to watch myself. I have to balance on this bamboo pole. And you have to make sure that the bamboo is stable. You have to watch yourself, and I have to watch myself. And then both of us can do this trick, and we can make our living." And of course, she passed the test because he was just testing her. And then this is a metaphor. The Buddha, he said, uh, by taking care of yourself, you take care of others. What does that mean? Well, he said, when we are taking care of ourselves, we develop mindfulness and meditation. And through that mindfulness and meditation, we can better take care of other people. And in taking care of others, we take care of ourselves. What does that mean? Well, when we develop forgiveness for other people, when we develop sympathy for other people, we develop compassion, good qualities for other people. In that process, we improve our mind, we ennoble our mind. This is how we develop it. But how is that different then from the cases that I mentioned, like the mother who takes care of their children but never takes care of herself? Well, that's one kind of love, but in this case, the Buddha meant a universal love that starts with yourself and then stretches out, then branches out to other people. It's like kindness that has to start with yourself. So when you take care of other people, without expecting anything in return, that's also a very important part of it. Then you are giving, and this is the giving mind, and the giving mind is always good for you. So in taking care of others, you take care of yourself. So these two, they go hand in hand. This is the famous simile of the two acrobats. And you can find many websites on Western Buddhism who talk about this simile. It's a very good simile. And very often when we struggle in our lives, we can ask ourselves the question, have we been taking care of ourselves in the right proportion? Or have we been taking care of others only? Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe we have been taking care of ourselves for a long time now, but we haven't really given anything to others. We haven't really tried to our best to help other people. You know, some people can be like that as well. They are ready to also do more for other people, but they don't. You know, I know some of these people. They come to our temple for a long time, but they don't see the value in being a spiritual friend for other people. They have the wisdom and the strength of mind and open heart to do so, but they don't, which is a shame because they can bring so much happiness to other people. But this is the highest goal of Buddhism, to take care of ourselves and also others. Buddha gave some examples. He said, if you are having faith, and in this case, faith doesn't mean being a member of a certain church or of a certain temple, but it means you believe in your own efficacy, that you can believe that you, to use a modern word, agency, you believe that you can do good, and that when you do good, then it will pay off. The goodness will come back to you. That is faith in Buddhism. Leading an ethical life and being generous, these are good qualities. And the Buddha said, if you also encourage others to do so too, then you live for the welfare of yourself and others. And then he said, visiting monks, it can also be other religious clergy, and you listen to the Dhamma that they teach. And then you encourage other people to do so too. Dhamma here means the wisdom. It's the term that we often use for Buddhism as well. And then you remember these things, and you remember and you examine them, and then you put them into practice. And then you can encourage others to do so too. So when you have listened to a talk like this and you meet each other somewhere else, you can remind each other, oh, this is a good talk, or that is a good talk, or that teacher taught us something good, or this teacher taught us something good. And then you remind each other of those good teachings, and that will help. Then you'll be each other's spiritual friend. And the spiritual friendship is very important in Buddhism. Okay. That is all I'd like to talk about today. And I think maybe one more thing that I can add at the end. I was going to skip it, but maybe I'll just add it. Can you see this? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, it's starting all over again. Maybe I'll just add in this a little bit more. So the beautiful thing on this path is that when you work spiritually for yourself and other people, then you have also an extra inspiration on the path. This is what the Buddha called your guidance, or in the Pali language, they use the word tipataya. Tipataya means there is yourself as guidance, atta tipataya, the other as guidance, and the Dhamma as guidance. Now, what does this mean? Well, some people, they have a bad habit. like uh, um, like smoking. And when they realize that it's a bad habit and they want to quit, how do they quit? Well, they have to have a very strong reflection, very strong why, and that is how you quit an addiction. So they use this strong why, and they think about how they might suffer if they keep on smoking. This is how you have yourself as guidance. But some people they just work like that for them, but they need other people as guidance. So when they tell themselves to stop smoking, they can't. But once they have a child, once they have a son or a lovely daughter, they they suddenly can stop smoking. Did you ever hear about that? You must have. Some people, they suddenly stop smoking just because they have a child. And that is taking the other as your guidance in your spiritual and moral life. And then some people are even different. They will stop smoking, but not because of themselves or because of others, but because they believe it's a wrong thing, because it's taught like that in Buddhism. This is the Dhamma as your guidance. Now, this is a very mundane example of a person who stopped smoking. We weren't really talking about that. We were talking about leading a complete and perfect spiritual life, taking care of yourself and others. But it works the same in the spiritual life, in the life where you try to be a good friend to other people, but also to yourself. Then sometimes you can grow because you would like to develop yourself. But sometimes it can also be that you would like to grow, you would like to develop good habits or give up bad habits because you see that you could be there more for other people. You could take better care of other people if you only gave up that bad habit or develop this good habit. This is when, this is why taking care of yourself and others at the same time can work so well sometimes if you use it in the right way. So once you know Lompi Borin, right? Lompi Borin, right? Yeah, he's been teaching there many times, right? Yeah. Lompi Borin, he I used to be there when he was asking a senior monk, one of the more senior monks in our temple. He asked him, what keeps you driving? What keeps you alive in this monk's life, in this spiritual life, in this path of doing good?" And he responded very interestingly. He said, "I used to go on these long processions, and then we call them in Thai, we call them tudong, den tudong. And he would walk for days, like walk, not, there would be breaks, of course, to have rest, but they would walk for a long time. And this is like a sort of simple life that they lead. They walk in processions. They walk like a sort of simple life. They will sleep under a tree, or they sleep in a simple temple in the rural areas of Thailand. And then they walk for another 8 hours, and they just walk and meditate. And then sometimes he said, sometimes I'd struggle because I was getting tired, or because I was missing my life in the temple. And then I looked back and I saw all my students were following me on the procession, and I was encouraged. He said, "Okay, I want to lead them in this procession. I want to be their leader." And then um, sometimes it was like that. And then sometimes his students, they would look up to him. They would look up to him, and they would want to follow him. They felt encouraged because he was he was leading them. And sometimes maybe the students would walk faster than him or something like that, and they would encourage one another. So it sometimes works like that in the spiritual path. We look around and we grow, but we also take notice of other people, and we don't want to compare ourselves with others too much. But sometimes you look and you see your fellow brothers on the spiritual path or your fellow sisters, and you see that they have developed something good in their lives, and then you ask them about it and you can learn. And sometimes you can grow in this way, helping each other. So this is all I'd like to share with you today. I was going to leave it at that.